over 80 Palestinians have been killed.
This is where your parents from Palestine?
A Zionist parade where they're threatening of the second Nakba, kicking them out, creating refugees.
The last thing I want to talk to you about was this convention you went to, and the message and the education now that's so important out there for people who are kind of ignorant on what's going on in this part of the world where you're, I mean, this is where your parents from Palestine?
Yes.
Right? So can you give us an update? Like, what's the latest? What's happening? Because a lot of times, I think it was several months back, you know, there was a lot of headlines, but it kind of died down now.
Yes.
Is there, what's changed? Is there anything different that it's not in the media now?
The only thing different now is that the energy's down and the trend is gone,
but the oppression
everything continues as was, if not worse.
If not worse.
Yes. So the way it is. So I was at the AMP, American Muslims for Palestine convention, and they brought a lot of speakers like Miko Peled, Imam Omar Suleiman, and a lot of people. They wanted to bring Muhammad al-Kurd, who's from East Jerusalem, and him and his sister Mun al-Kurd. They were essential in using social media to raise awareness about what was happening in East Jerusalem. And I can give a quick overview as to what happened just this year alone. We don't have to talk about the 70-year history of Palestine and what happened to Palestinians by Israel and the oppression. Just this year alone, in around Ramadan time, Israel started bombing Gaza. And there was just media silence. Before that, there was a parade or a group of extremist Zionists in Israel and Jerusalem marching through the streets, chanting death to Arabs. And there's no media coverage at all. A few Muslim outlets here and there, but no mainstream media coverage. Then there's a parade, a Zionist parade, where they're threatening of the second Nakba. For those who don't know, the Nakba is when in 1948 Israel was created, and it was created by committing mass ethnic cleansing and a mass exodus of over 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes, kicking them out, creating refugees, and up to this day there's millions of refugees, Palestinian refugees outside of Palestine who cannot return home. So that was the first Nakba. There were parades threatening of a second Nakba to say we're going to finish the job now.
When you say Nakba, for people that don't know, what does that mean?
So the Nakba means the catastrophe, the great catastrophe, which is the mass exodus, the ethnic cleansing of 750,000 Palestinians from their homes when Israel was created. So Israel denies this ever happened. But then they have extremist Zionist parades threatening of a second Nakba while denying the first one ever existed. So there's a lot of hypocrisy in the way Israel does its propaganda. But then again, no media coverage. And then there's the attacks in East Jerusalem, whereby the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, or the occupation force rather, they would go in and invade Al-Aqsa Mosque. They would beat up protesters, shoot tear gas, shoot rubber bullets, or it's rather, rubber bullets is a very nice way of saying it, they're steel-coated, or rather rubber-coated steel bullets. So they can still cause a lot of damage and internal damage. They can cause blindness if they hit your eye. They can give you brain damage if they hit you in the head.
Bones.
They can break bones. They can cause paralysis if they hit you in the spine. So they're just bullets that they might not kill you, but they'll kill your ability to live.
They'll cripple you.
They will cripple you for life.
I don't know, yeah. We're thinking when they say, you think like the kids are playing with those rubber, you know. The
Nerf guns.
The Nerf guns. It's not a Nerf gun.
Yeah, it's not a Nerf gun. It's an adult Nerf gun that can cripple you for life. Wow. And again, no media coverage. The only time media coverage happened was when Hamas, which is the government of Gaza, they said, if you keep doing this, we're going to have to fire back. We're going to have to defend ourselves. We're going to have to do something. And Israel was like, oh, really? Okay, cool. And they did another attack. And they invaded Al-Aqsa Mosque again. And they kept doing that. And then Hamas fired a few missiles, which were obviously intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, Israel's nuclear state. It has one of the strongest militaries in the world. Hamas can't do anything to them. But Hamas threw a few missiles just in retaliation to everything you're doing. And just like that, the mainstream media covered it like there was no tomorrow. It's like the time started, the watch started as soon as Palestinians reacted to all the oppression. They start on their own time. And that's what happened. And then all over the media, it was Palestinians attack Israel, Hamas fires missiles at Israel, Hamas, terrorist organization doing this, doing that. But no one ever mentioned anything about the months of just constant attacks of Palestinians happening right before that. And that's the problem. The way the media was covering it was Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas. A nuclear state has the right to defend itself against people who are making, homemade rockets and are resisting an occupation. And then the way the media covered it was that words matter. And I made a video called Words Matter. And the media hypocrisy is so blatant, whereby when a Palestinian dies, they called it Palestinians dead. Palestinian died. When an Israeli died, they called it killed. Israeli was killed, was murdered. Because those words invoke two different emotions. When I say someone died, you're like, oh, he probably had a heart attack. Did he have COVID? Right? When I say someone was killed, you know that there is some sort of oppression happening, some sort of violence took place. So they were using that as well, as part of their war on words, I guess, their propaganda. And furthermore, in East Jerusalem, in places like Beta, Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah, there's a continuous ethnic displacement of Palestinians, whereby Israel will take homes away from Palestinians, and they will give it to any person who claims to be Jewish from any place in the world. And the most famous scene, I don't know if you saw this, but it was where Muna al-Kurd was confronting a Zionist Jew from Brooklyn, I believe, or from Long Island, New York.
Yaakov, this is not your house.
And she was like, what are you doing in my house? And he just blatantly said, well, why are you blaming me? If I don't do it, someone else will do it. If I don't steal it, someone else will steal it.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
It's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
Yeah, that was the video that went viral. Yeah.
Yes. And that's when people, they just pump the brakes. They're like, what? The records crashed. It's like, what happened? Hold up, did that man just actually say that? If I don't steal it, someone else will steal it? Mm-hmm. And then that exposed what was happening in Sheikh Jarrah, whereby the government and the Israeli Supreme Court just issues orders in order to get any Jewish person from any place in the world to take over the home of a Palestinian as part of a larger ethnic displacement program. And then that is just simply what's happening, and then some as well. In the West Bank, settlements are illegal settlements, by the way, which are illegal by international law, are being built throughout the West Bank, military checkpoints everywhere to ensure that Palestinians will never ever be able to have, a state, to make sure that Palestine will be annexed slowly but surely until there's absolutely no other option but for Israel to just take over all of historic Palestine. And in a nutshell, that's what's happening in Palestine. And the only thing that, as people outside of Palestine, Palestinians and pro-Palestinians, the only thing we can do at this point is the most important thing, and that's raise awareness. Give them a voice when the media censors them. To be able to speak, to pressure our politicians, our elected representatives, whereby in Canada and the States are one of the biggest sponsors of Israel. Be the United States giving Israel $3.8 billion a year, and Canada selling Israel hundreds of millions of dollars in military technology. So it is on us as Canadian citizens, as American citizens, to be able to stand up for Palestinian human rights and pressure our own governments to stop funding oppression. Because we need to remember, Palestine is not just a Palestinian issue. Palestine is not just a Muslim issue. Palestine is not just an Arab issue. Palestine is a humanitarian issue. And if you claim to care about humanitarian issues, about human rights, about justice, then you have to also care about Palestine.